Hello friends, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Nicole Smith, and in today's video I'm going to be talking a little bit about the life in Florida during hurricanes. So stick around if you want to learn a little bit more about what it's really like living in Florida. Thanks so much for sticking around, friends. If you don't know me, my name's Nicole Smith. I'm a realtor here in Jacksonville, Florida, and I have been living here with my family for 10 years now. And we moved here from the Great White North. We moved here from Ontario, Canada, and we were neighbors to Detroit, Michigan. So we know what cold winters are like and what terrible weather is like. We experienced, every kind of weather up in that area. But when you move to Florida, you have to be more prepared for hurricanes. Now, before I decided to move to Florida, I did some research and found out that Jacksonville, Florida hadn't had any hurricanes since, I think it was 1964. Hurricane Dora came in, and that was the last one in 75 years that had hit Jacksonville, Florida. Now, if you look at the map of Florida, you can see that Jacksonville is in the northeast portion of Florida. And because we have that little bit of an inlet there, but for some reason, the storms quite often miss us. Now, in 2017, while I lived here, Irma did come through and did some extensive damage along the shoreline. And we had a lot of flooding. And the flooding was primarily in the downtown area. It had rained so much, there was high tide, so many different factors took place in the downtown portion of Jacksonville flooded. It destroyed a lot of businesses and some homes, unfortunately, got water damage. Now, as I'm sure you're aware, we have had several hurricanes already this year. And NOAA, who is the organization that tracks and predicts hurricanes, they predicted that this season would have 85% more serious hurricanes than any other season. And there was 24 named hurricanes. I'll put that slide up here on the screen. And as you can see, we are on the second column. Nadine is on her way. We experienced Helene. We experienced Milton. Now, Milton was just here last week. So when I'm taping this, Milton was here last week. Helene was here about 2 weeks before. People were still recovering from Helene when Milton came through, and now there's another one on its way. So what is it truly like to live in Florida during a hurricane? Well, a lot of times the news is really hyping up the hurricane, and if you're not from here, your first time, you're really nervous, you don't know what to do, so you read a lot, and you have to be prepared. Getting prepared means getting candles, getting batteries, buying some canned good foods, stocking up on water, preparing your home. If you live closer to a water area, you may have to go and get some sand and sandbags around your whole house to prevent the water from getting in. Other portions of the area would have to buy boards, or they may have hurricane windows and hurricane protectors that they would have to get screwed and nailed onto their home. It depends on where you live. Now, I don't live anywhere near the water, so typically we'll get candles, we'll get batteries, we make sure we have lighters. If you have a barbecue, you make sure that you have propane. Some people who are fortunate enough, they'll buy generators. Some people will have gas stoves, and the gas will still be working, so they'll still be able to cook. Most of the time, they tell you to prepare by filling your bathtub with water. Why? in case you need to use that water to flush your toilet. Other preparations are getting freezer bags, putting some water in them, getting them in the freezer, and then when you lose power, you can have those in there and put in a cooler so some of your food will stay cold. Those are just some of the ways that we prepare for a hurricane here. Now, unfortunately, you can't prepare all the way. There's not everything that you can possibly prepare. And when it becomes a state of an emergency and it's a mandatory evacuation, you need to have a to-go bag. All of your most important documents need to be ready to move with you. If you have time and you have bins, or you could go to the store and buy bins, you can buy some plastic bins, get as much out of your cupboards that could be destroyed, get them in the bins, get them on top of higher ground, and make sure you try to prepare as best possible with all the furniture and important items that you really do not want to lose and are irreplaceable. Get those protected. Obviously, you need to make sure you have insurance, and you make sure you have hurricane insurance. Now, insurance companies, they will put a window, a time frame of when they will allow you to add hurricane insurance. So keep that in mind. One of the biggest differences I've noticed from living in Northern Ontario and living in Michigan and going through snowstorms and going through hurricanes, the biggest difference is, one, you get time to prepare. Snow, yes, you get time to prepare, but not in the same extent as you get time to prepare for a hurricane. I often remember being forced to drive to work in snowstorm to get to work in a snowstorm. Here, when you're going through and in the midst of preparing for hurricanes, 90% of the companies are closing down. They're sending the employees home to prepare, and you're going to get what they call hurricane pay. So they seem to take this very serious here, and they want you to prepare. During a snowstorm, you don't get as much grace, you don't get snow pay, you almost get forced to drive to work, and it's very dangerous driving in a snowstorm, as some of you may know who live in the Northeast and the Midwest and anywhere where there is snow. The West, there's even some places that have so much rain that it's dangerous to even drive to work in rain. But here they take it very seriously, and that is one of the biggest differences I've noticed. Now, the last two that came through the Jacksonville, Florida area, Helene was a little more, I would say, serious for us because a lot more people lost power during that hurricane in Jacksonville. I think we lost power for about 13 hours, and I was grateful that all that happened. There was down trees, branches, and not too much destruction. Now, during Milton, we didn't lose any power here that I know of. There was a lot of people who had there was flooding, but a lot of us didn't really get anything in the Jacksonville area. In Daytona Beach, they got flooding. In Palm Coast, flooding, and there's still a lot of residents without power in those areas. D-Land, which is right there, flooded. So Hastings, there was some flooding. Some parts of St. Augustine flooded. Metro Jacksonville had some flooding a little bit in the downtown area again, but not a lot. But it was high tide also, and we had a tremendous amount of rain. Unfortunately, during this hurricane, the west side of the state was preparing. Sarasota, Tampa Bay, But that hurricane was so strong that it hit almost every part of the west of Florida. And even where the eye did not even hit, in the surrounding part of that eye, with the high tides, the flooding, there are so many people that got flooded. There was so much devastation. And unfortunately, tornadoes tore through Florida at the highest number, I believe, on record. And those tornadoes went through the south part of Florida, where people had even went to for refuge who lived on the west coast. There was a lot of damage here in Florida, and compared to Helene, which there was damage, but Helene ripped through Georgia, North Carolina, and beyond. And I mean, as you have seen, I'm sure, on the news with Asheville, never seen water and flooding like that, and roads just being ripped away from the mountainsides. I mean, a lot of devastation. So are people making up their mind that they're going to not move to Florida because of hurricanes? It's a possibility that these hurricanes will even scare some of the residents away that have lived here, that perhaps have had major damage or have had devastation and lost everything. There are so many pros and cons to hurricanes. Obviously, there's not too many pros, but I mean, there's so many pros to Florida, but definitely hurricanes is a con. But we don't know when, where, how, or anything. We can't control hurricanes. We can only control how our home is built. If we can build from the ground up and build a hurricane-proof home, if we can afford extra insurance when it comes to hurricanes, when we are purchasing our home furnishings, what type are we buying? There's only a small amount of things we can control. And are we going to let the weather control where we live? Some people, it's going to be a yes. For other people, they're just going to weigh it out and just say, you know what, it's okay. I can deal with these hurricanes. And hurricane season starts from the beginning of June, goes to the end of November. June, July, August, September, October, November. That's 6 months of hurricane season. Now, typically, we get more activity in October and November than we do in all those other months. But we do have hurricane season, those in pairs. And I'm not a meteorologist. I haven't, done an in-depth study of hurricanes. I just wanted to share with you my perspective of living here during a hurricane. I was actually out of town and wasn't able to fly back home because of hurricanes. So it affects everybody in a different way. I know people who went on cruises and they had to be rerouted because of the hurricane. I know other people were on the cruise and then they couldn't come back to port because of the hurricane. So if you like cruising and you're thinking of going on a cruise, think about November. It's one of the hardest hurricane months, and October are the highest hurricane months. If you are still considering going on a cruise, you're going to have to weigh all of your options. And I know we're talking about living in Jacksonville, Florida, but one of the nice things I must say is that we have been very, very fortunate up in the north portion of Jacksonville. Will it always be that way? I don't know. But I do know that we have been very blessed here, and I feel very grateful that there hasn't been as much devastation here in the Metro Jacksonville area as there has been. And I pray for the entire state. I pray for every state that's been impacted by these hurricanes. All the people that have lost their lives, lost loved ones, lost their homes, lost their businesses. It's very, very difficult. And it's sad. It really is sad. But I know that Mother Nature is everywhere. If you're in California, you have fires, you have dry spells, right? And then fires, you have drought, and you have landslides. Then you'll have earthquakes. I mean, wildfires. I mean, there's so much going on in every part of this country that, you're bound to find some natural disasters almost everywhere. Basically, you have to pick and choose where you want to live for you, not just based upon, the bad part of the weather. Now, I did choose to move to Florida primarily because I was tired of winter and being cold. And now that I've experienced summer in Florida and living here for 10 years and living through hurricanes, I would rather go through the hurricanes than go through snowstorms and cold and bitter, bitter, bitter cold. That's me. But you have to choose what's best for you. And if you do decide that you are really thinking about moving to the Metro Jacksonville area, make sure you put in an appointment into my calendar. I'll leave a link below, and we can just have a consultation. We can go over the pros and cons, and I can help you make a decision if Metro Jacksonville is going to be a place you might want to live, or if the hurricanes are so scary to you that you just, no, I can't do it. I don't want to live in a hurricane area. So that is definitely something we can discuss. I can go over what the pros and cons are and which areas to live in that may be closer to the water. You have to consider that, not so close to the water. Living in a single family home, there might be other reasons and other options for you that will best suit your needs. And I have toured a lot of different communities throughout this Metro Jacksonville area, and I've posted these videos. So if you were wanting to look at some other information about Metro Jacksonville, make sure you like this video, subscribe to my channel, and even go back and look through for it. I'll post the link up here, and maybe those other communities or those other informational videos I've done will help you decide if reaching out to me is something you want to get started. My name's Nicole Smith. Like I said, I'm a realtor, and I would love to help you make the move to Jacksonville, Florida. I've been living the dream here for over 10 years now, and I would love for you to be my neighbor. Thanks so much for watching, friends, and until next time, go Lions.